Welcome to the Specialty Pharmacy Podcast. This Specialty Pharmacy Podcast is a collaboration with the National Association of Specialty Pharmacy, the NASP, and the Pharmacy Podcast Network. The mission of the National Association of Specialty Pharmacy is to improve specialty pharmacy practice by promoting continuing professional education and certification of specialty pharmacists, while advocating for public policies that ensure patient access to specialty medications. As the healthcare industry's leading podcast dedicated to the pharmacy profession, the Pharmacy Podcast Network is proud to bring our listeners the Specialty Pharmacy Podcast in partnership with the NASP.
Hey, Pharmacy Podcast Network. Welcome back to another episode of the Specialty Pharmacy Podcast. Today, we're welcoming back Jim Smeeding of Indication and CEO of KeyCentrix on an incredibly interesting topic that we had with Jim and Elie last time, part one of this series, which is in the show notes of part two. If you didn't get to hear the first part, please go back and listen to part one. Jim, welcome back to the Specialty Pharmacy Podcast.
Hey, Todd, it's great to be back, and I knew that we would take a little more time in terms of putting together a little orientation towards how medical marijuana in the specialty pharmacy space, and certainly through the Specialty Pharmacy Podcast, is really a terrific topic for everybody to know more about.
Elie, you and I were talking offline between the two shows, and you brought up some really good points about the pharmacist's role in disease states, in management, in reporting of the outcomes, and coupling medical marijuana with these disease states. So I'm going to turn it over to you to ask some additional questions of Jim.
Absolutely. Welcome back, Jim. During our first part of the podcast, you talked about the medical marijuana combined with regular drugs, the combination, the use, and how they could be dispensed. My question to you in this part is the role of the pharmacist in the patient education around the usage of medical marijuana today, and how it's going to look once it has been approved from a federal perspective. How will it be? What type of data should we be looking at? And in your opinion, being involved in health economics, how it's going to be looking as a big data? Sure.
Well, thanks, Elie. And, these are terrific questions because, again, I guess if we look back 10 years ago, in our lifetime, we didn't realize that we would have this whole new class of opportunities in pharmacy and to help take care of patients. So again, the specialty space is special because of the care it gives to patients, and that's what pharmacists do. So I can see very clearly creative, innovative, specialty, community pharmacy practitioners becoming more and more involved in the medical marijuana space. So as we finished off our first podcast, I talked a little bit about Epidiolex, which is cannabidiol that's going to be probably in the marketplace by the time that most listeners listen to this podcast. And I think that offers some very, very interesting opportunities. So let me expand on that just a little bit. And then I'm going to talk a little bit more about novel compounds, other combination products, and opportunities and from the data side, which I think are critical for all of this particular space. So Epidiolex, again, is cannabidiol. It's cannabidiol, refined cannabidiol, FDA-approved cannabidiol, which means that pharmacists will dispense it, physicians will write for it, and through a series of probably prior authorizations and other steps, insurers will end up paying for this particular product. Nobody is going to deny a sick child with Dravet's an uncontrollable disease in terms of seizures, access to this medication, because it basically poor families have already gone through treatment failure, step edit types of things that happen on the payer side in pharmacy. So And I've worked with GW Pharma, so I'm happy to tell you that, and as I told them, that this product will be a game changer in the medical marijuana space, in particular because it is a purified cannabis-based medicine that's gone through FDA manufactured approval. So with that being said, now, what are those other opportunities? Well, first of all, I think it raises a lot of awareness in the American public that pharmacists should key on and should talk more about medical marijuana. I mean, again, I think campaigns, let's talk about medical marijuana, things like that to educate the public are critical. But for some patients in particular, having cannabidiol come to market as FDA approved and already having dronabinol, which is a synthetic THC, really means that you basically can combine those two products on a customized basis to offer specific therapy, particularly in the oncology space. And I think that what we found out is that a little bit of THC, which would be the dronabinol combination with cannabidiol, offers a much better response. And we've done research in Indication Bio, the company that I started with another colleague of mine, Matt Sherwood, to take a look at how this traces of THC offer opportunities to, when combined with cannabidiol, to be far more effective products in terms of patients getting a positive response. Lots of research to be done in it. This is pretty anecdotal stuff. There's not a lot of people collecting data on that, but there are opportunities out there. I know of one collective of probably 140 oncologists that has a pharmacist who is a compounder internal to their operation, who I could see now utilizing combinations of dronabinol and cannabidiol to put together specific formulations for patients with various forms of cancer based on body weight. Titration is extremely important. I think most people in the medical marijuana space, no matter what, whether it's your smoking, edibles, extracts, what have you, would tell you that you have to titrate. So I think, again, if you think about how pharmacists can be involved in terms of the specialty side of it, I think that's a terrific opportunity. I worked a number of years ago with Sanofi on a Rimonabant, and this was a drug that everybody thought would have great promise in the marketplace, but it didn't have this balanced combination of cannabidiol and THC, and therefore it was not as effective and had much greater side effect profile, which is why you don't see it as an approved product in the United States. So again, we're starting to get approved by FDA product combinations that we can obviously bring forward in the marketplace. So that's a good example, I think, of what that first opportunity is. But I think we see there's other research going on in the marketplace today. Outside of Indication Bio, the company that is near and dear to my heart, as president of it, we see that, for example, patents issued for the use of cannabidiol with NSAIDs. So basically your Elie, your Motrins, your ibuprofen products, what have you, are probably at some point, once you go through the research, will come into the marketplace as an improved product. I think, again, as we know, we see people in the dermatology space very much interested in what the opportunities are with cannabidiol. And in fact, in Indication Bio, we're looking at the use of cannabidiol in various cream forms for acne. And again, our approach is to use cannabidiol in much higher doses than you see in these OTC products that are on the internet, which quite honestly need to be better analyzed, can't make the claims that they're making, and should be, I think, buyer beware in terms of what the efficacy of those products are. Again, that's just my opinion as a medical professional. So that opportunity exists, and I'll talk to you a little bit about, and I don't want to be self-serving, about Indication Bio and what our efforts look like in this space. Matt and I hold a patent right now to combine cannabidiol with statins, lipid-lowering agents. And there's a terrific rationale behind it. We are going through the scientific process to prove it. But if you take a look at it, there's 3 reasons why cannabidiol with a statin, whether it be a Lipitor, a Crestor, atorvastatin, what have you, the reason that you would combine these 2 products together, there's for a bunch of reasons, but I'll first talk about there are a ton of patients using statins or would like to use statins who can't because of the side effects that they have when they take a statin agent. It's usually related to muscle weakness, other areas like that, and of course rhabdomyolysis being the most critical side effect of patients that don't tolerate statins. So what could we do to benefit these particular patients is really how we kind of looked at it as a lens. We said, well, cannabidiol does 3 important things. First of all, it competes in the same metabolic pathway in the liver as statins are metabolized in. So if we give something that competes, we know that we can probably lower the dose of the statin agent, which would lower the side effect profile and improve the effectiveness of the product because it would not only be tolerated, but you'd take a much lower dose. So that's the first orientation. The second orientation, if you know anything about cannabidiol, is it's a strong antioxidative agent. So that means inflammation is one of the areas that we know is critical in terms of cardiovascular health where people have lipid disorders. So if we can give something that decreases that inflammation, my goodness gracious, we may actually decrease heart attacks in general. So we think that's really a critical factor as well. So metabolic pathway, decreased dose, antioxidative, anti-inflammatory, we think are all the areas that make great sense. And of course, it's a hypothesis today. So we want to bring that product into the marketplace, test it, get it FDA approved, offer it through pharmacies, pharmacists, physicians, and payers to have a better product today to work against some of the lipid issues that we still have in this country. I think we see very expensive products that have come into the market, PCSK9s, etc. Well, gee, this may be a much better alternative, just as medical marijuana seems to be a much better alternative than opioids. So finding these products, combining these products with current Western medicine today and utilize them properly is one of the areas. The other area that I think is really interesting is, again, receptor site and finding novel cannabinoids that are specific to receptor sites and therefore specific to disease and disease maladies. One of the goals of Indication Bioscience after commercialization of this first product, what we call Statin Plus product, is to have a platform for combinational chemistry development of identifying receptor sites and novel cannabinoid products that we can then bring into the marketplace through the FDA and again offer back to pharmacy and pharmacists and to medical professionals. So, those are some of the areas that we're working in. We're also being asked on an international basis to help educate where countries outside of the U.S. want to incorporate medical marijuana completely within the organized medicine system as opposed to in the U.S. where it's been basically segregated and has a certain stigma. So, again, a long answer, but kind of thought-provoking in terms of what the promise is as we kind of move forward.
Jim, when we come back, we're going to take a short break for one of our sponsors of the Specialty Pharmacy Podcast. I have some questions about technology and about big data as well. So we'll be right back here in just a second.
KeyCentrix has been leading and guiding the pharmacy industry for over 40 years. A forerunner of innovation and technology, KeyCentrix more than delivers pharmacy software solutions to the ever-expanding complex network of healthcare. The heart of KeyCentrix is dedicated to restoring patient health and promoting patient compliance by the continuation of care through pharmacy management. KeyCentrix brings pharmacy management to a comprehensive level of understanding and precision, unlike anything available in the industry. KeyCentrix New Leaf RX pharmacy management software revolutionizes this opportunity for specialty pharmacy markets. New Leaf RX thinks like a pharmacist and a prescriber at the same time, while also providing the data needed for decisions from every other contributor in the healthcare ecosystem. New LeafRx will lead to successful outcome-based processes, guaranteed. At the end of the day, KeyCentrix software packages have what every pharmacy has been looking for. New LeafRx is the next level of pharmacy management systems. For more information and to experience a demo, visit KeyCentrix.com.
Hey, we're back with Jim Smeeding and Elie Khalife on the Specialty Pharmacy Podcast, talking about medical marijuana and the pharmacist's role in specialty pharmacy. Jim, you just touched a little bit on technology. I envision, for example, a pharmacy system like New LeafRx having a library of information that when you bring up a disease state that you're involved in, that you're helping a patient with, oncology, for example, in that space, as soon as you bring up that medication that's coming from a specific manufacturer, that's being handled in a specific measure, it's being handled through maybe a specific REMS reporting topic in organization of data, all of a sudden in that same library, the New LeafRx system has information that pulls up and says, hey, pharmacist, there's a derivative or a component of medical cannabis that can associate and or accompany this disease state in this medication, and the future of what that could do to either accelerate the therapy or assist in the therapy. But what are your thoughts around leveraging the big data and technology in kind of embedding it into a pharmacy management system?
Well, now you've really got me lathered up, Todd, because, again, I mentioned that I'm a health economics, health outcomes researcher as well. And I think anybody who looks me up will see a couple hundred citations, what have you, in that particular area, good data practices, etc. One of the areas that I've worked with in the past is to put together a registry for utilization for patients in this particular area. As you point out, Elie, New Leaf, the opportunities there within their data set, especially pharmacy, is a terrific opportunity to start collecting information and data that shows the benefits and the value. The stigma of marijuana use, even in the medical space, has really restricted patients from offering their patient-reported outcomes. And, of course, since it's not going through medical channels, but through mostly what I'll call dispensaries, where non-medical professionals interact with the patient, we don't have that information. One of the goals that I would love to see in my lifetime is have this particular utilization and orientation embedded into care management for particular diseases. I would suggest that I mentioned before the break a pharmacist with 140 oncologists who has the opportunity to compound and dispense balanced products for oncology use. I would hope that person in their database is keeping track. The thing that is very interesting to me is when we start patients into any kind of a electronic medical record, it should have some past medical history. And I think that, unfortunately, again today, the stigma of asking in terms of recreational drug use, that you don't get a lot of honest answers. I know when I'm asked, do you drink and do you smoke? I'm happy to tell people, first of all, yes, I do drink. Not in excess, because I think that's something that it needs to be in your medical record. And, I do not smoke nicotine. And I think if I was asked, do I believe or do I utilize medical marijuana in any capacity, I would not only want to indicate yes, but I would also want to indicate under what indications and what my experience has been. And of course, to do that, you probably need to get it into some quantifiable data fields and things that can be standardized across the industry. So, that's a big goal. We've been talking about data registries, big data, and you got to start somewhere. So I raise my hat to Elie and his organization in terms of building this into some of their care management as well as patient intake types of orientation so that patients can start expressing a little more clearly and medical professionals can start collecting a little more data. I think, the big challenge on the dispensary is that you've got multiple strains of marijuana with various different componentry. And while you can go in to talk to your local bud tender in regards to, gee, I'm not sleeping, I'm in pain, I'm having trauma, I've got muscle weakness, I've got a crink in my neck, whatever, that never gets translated into anything that's really a set data space where you can contribute the positive benefits to what componentry of the medication is probably giving you the cause and effect that's beneficial to the patient. So again, I think you can say, oh, you ought to be use a little more of an indica product or more of a sativa-driven product, more of a combination of those. I do think that until we kind of normalize data collection and the opportunities around organized medicine, which again I think is evident in specialty pharmacy, is going to be evident in compounding pharmacy, and is going to be something that any practitioner who is believing, explaining, educating patients about this opportunity ought to be collecting that kind of information and data. So I think, again, if you take a look, there's a very interesting article that was published in 2006, and it's still probably the Bible today. It was published by National Institutes of Health, what have you, by a fellow by name Paul Patcher, and cited multiple times. It's the title of the article is "The Endocannabinoid System as an Emerging Target of Pharmacotherapy," and I think disease by disease, it lists out what has been kind of anecdotally reported, what's been scientifically reported, and then every single conclusion, unfortunately, is that we need more data related to the particular utilization of products in this particular space. So again, Elie and his organization, I give them a lot of credit for understanding that this is a critical field that ought to be collected, as well as some correlation to how the patient is doing. And I think Epidiolex, and I don't know all of GW Pharma's requirements yet because the product hasn't been approved, but you would think it would be under some kind of a REMS orientation just to make sure that data was collected on patient utilization and benefits.
Jim, we definitely are fortunate to be in the specialty arena and be ready to collect all the data that the industry needs, the pharmacy and the patient needs to report, whether at the time of counseling or using third-party tools to report their improvement, their status. And with medical marijuana, with the consumption of medical marijuana, it is critical that the patient, whether they in any disease state, especially with the elderly or the kids, how they are doing, reporting back, like in specialty, reporting back to the pharmacist about their stage. So definitely we have the tools, the technical tools, to help the industry and the pharmacist and the physicians to push this data back to the certifying bodies and to the FDA to get them approved. Now we do understand that even though it hasn't been approved in all states, some of the database, medical database, they already have the NDCs and the compounding ingredients for the strength of medical marijuana, medicinal marijuana. So which is great. It's a great start. We're definitely part of the ecosystem, and we are definitely ready to hit this market as fast as we can. We know it's going to be approved. We know it is beneficial as a replacement for opioids. We know it's beneficial as a replacement for other drugs. I'm not going to name those drugs, but drugs that will fight, being dizzy or being in pain, or basically helping with food.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, Elie. I mean, whether it's post-traumatic stress, whether it's nausea, vomiting, muscle-related, multiple sclerosis, etc. There's a lot of people looking at these particular areas, and I would not be surprised. I mean, we have major pharmaceutical companies. I mean, GW is not well recognized since it's out of Great Britain, but Teva Pharmaceuticals is a good example of a major pharmaceutical company. Johnson & Johnson has its own division that is basically getting ready to synthesize cannabidiol. So, there's great interest from major players because they know that the time is coming and the science that we have to put together is there, and the ability to collect the data is there. Now it's just a matter of resolve and wherewithal to do it. So,
hey, Jim and Elie, imagine having a mobile application that a dispensary/pharmacy gives out to their patients and says to that patient, hey, Mr. or Miss Patient, you have this disease state. You are a candidate for medical marijuana to accompany your other medication. However, you don't get your medicine unless you participate in a specific data set gathering. So therefore, every 30 days when you come back for your refill /medication/medical marijuana, if you don't have these data sets filled out, you don't get your medicine. And I'll bet you any money we could force patients to participate in the data gathering because of the benefits of medical marijuana and how much better that they feel because of the combination of medical marijuana and that other disease state medication. And that's just my 2 cents imagination of where this could all go.
Well, Todd, that's not really all that far-fetched. I mean, employers can now demand patients follow particular programs, what have you. I think any specialty pharmacy knows that under limited distribution drugs, there's a requirement from the manufacturer to collect and provide certain data related to patients. And, there's a fair market value associated with that as well in terms of opportunities. So, again, in some ways, it's kind of like aligning all the incentives, Todd. And as you point out, for a patient to contribute their experience, patient-reported outcome, what have you, is not very far-fetched at all when it comes down to traditional medicine. So in an alternative medicine area, like the use of medical marijuana, I actually think that as we continue to move past the stigmas that we all grew up with, that we'll see more patients willing to participate and sometimes be required to participate, since, again, some of that information is becoming more and more critical now in terms of value-based contracting even. So, again, you have to have the patient's aspect of reporting, relief, what have you, if you want to participate in a positive outcome under a value-based contract. So it's lots of the data that we desire, only the patient has. So involving them in the process is totally appropriate.
So, Jim, I want to thank you again for coming back on the Specialty Pharmacy Podcast to share this very interesting information. I also want to thank Elie Khalife and the KeyCentrix team for sponsoring this 2-part series. I want to let the listeners know that Jim's contact information email address will be in the show notes, jim.smeeding@indication.bio. It will be in the show notes. Jim, if there's people that have additional questions for you, they can reach out to you there.
Absolutely. We'd love to have their interest and participation as Indication Bio continues to move in the marketplace. Someday, we'll probably look at some of the products that we bring into the market in terms of how they've changed patients' lives. in terms of improving them, and what the opportunity is to have this whole new opportunity to use medical marijuana in the medicalization space.
If you are a pharmacy owner, or more specifically in the specialty pharmacy space, you run a pharmacy, manage pharmacies, and you want to look at a dynamic system, New Leaf RX by the KeyCentrix team, designed specifically for order-based management and disease state management. Elie, Khalife, thank you so much for sponsoring this two-part series.
Thank you again. Thank you, Todd, and thank you, Jim. Thank you for accepting our invitation. It's always a pleasure to chat with you.
Thanks so much, Elie. Thanks so much, Todd. I enjoyed the Specialty Pharmacy podcast, and I hope our listeners will too.
Very good. You are listening to the Specialty Pharmacy Podcast, brought to you by the KeyCentrix team. Please find them at KeyCentrix.com. And we thank you for listening to the Specialty Pharmacy Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Specialty Pharmacy Podcast. Be sure to share this podcast with your fellow pharmacists, doctors, and healthcare providers dedicated to optimal patient care. If you have ideas for future episode topics, please email the Pharmacy Podcast Network. Send your message to publisher@pharmacypodcast.com.